The wagon wheel splintered into 3 pieces just as the sun began its brutal assault on the Utah desert, and Olivia Vernon knew she was going to die out here if someone did not find her soon. She stood beside her broken wagon on the dusty trail leading into St. George, her hands bleeding from trying to repair the wheel herself, her water supply down to less than a canteen, and her hope fading faster than the morning coolness. It was June of 1878, and she had been traveling alone for 6 weeks since leaving her aunt's house in Colorado, determined to claim the small parcel of land her deceased father had left her just outside this growing Utah settlement. Now, staring at the useless wagon and the still 15 miles of desert between her and town, Olivia wondered if her stubborn independence would be the death of her. The heat shimmered across the red rock landscape, making the distant mesas look like they were dancing. She had passed 2 other travelers yesterday, but today the road was empty. Her horse, a gentle mare named Daisy, stood in what little shade the wagon provided, looking as miserable as Olivia felt. She had unhitched the animal when the wheel broke, hoping to at least save the horse if nothing else. Olivia was 22 years old enough to know better than to travel alone through this country, but young enough to still believe her determination could overcome any obstacle. Her father had taught her to be self-reliant before he died 3 years ago, and her mother had passed when Olivia was just a child. She had no siblings, no husband, and after her aunt remarried a man who made Olivia's skin crawl, she knew she had to leave. The land in Utah was her only chance at a fresh start, at building something of her own. She was trying to fashion a splint for the wheel using a board from inside the wagon when she heard the sound of hooves. Olivia looked up, shading her eyes against the glare, and saw a rider approaching from the direction of St. George. Her heart leaped with hope even as her mind urged caution. Out here, a woman alone had to be careful about who she trusted. The rider drew closer, and she could make out more details. He sat tall in the saddle, wearing a dusty brown hat and dark clothing despite the heat. He rode with the easy confidence of a man who spent most of his life on horseback. As he approached, he slowed his horse to a walk, and Olivia could see his face beneath the brim of his hat. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with strong features weathered by sun and wind, dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and eyes that were scanning her situation with quick intelligence. "Looks like you have got some trouble here," he said, his voice a deep rumble that somehow made her feel both nervous and relieved at the same time. "The wheel broke about an hour ago," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice steady and confident. "I can manage. I was just working on a repair." The man dismounted, and she could see he was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and the lean build of someone who worked hard every day. He walked around the wagon, examining the broken wheel, then looked at the makeshift splint she had been attempting. "That is not going to hold more than a mile, if that," he said, not unkindly. "And you have got about 15 miles still to St. George." "I know how far it is," Olivia said, hearing the defensive edge in her own voice and hating it. She was hot, tired, scared, and now embarrassed that this stranger could see how badly she had failed at something as simple as reaching her destination. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression softened. "I am not saying you are not capable. I am saying that wheel is beyond a field repair. You need a blacksmith, and the nearest one is in town." Olivia felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She would not cry in front of this stranger. "Then I suppose I will walk and lead my horse." "Thank you for stopping to check on me. In this heat, you would be dead before you made it halfway." He took off his hat and wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "I am Thomas Irving. I have got a ranch about 3 miles north of here, Let me take you to my place. We can get your wagon there with some work, and I've got tools and materials. I can fix that wheel properly, and then you can be on your way to wherever you are heading." Olivia studied him carefully. Thomas Irving had an honest face, and his eyes met hers directly without the leering quality she had learned to watch for in men. Still, going to a stranger's ranch was a risk. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Irving, but I cannot impose on you like that. Perhaps you could send someone from town to help me. By the time I ride to town, find someone willing to come out here in this heat and ride back. It will be late afternoon. You have got enough water to last that long in this sun." He nodded toward her nearly empty canteen. She did not. They both knew it. "I've got a housekeeper," Thomas added. "Mrs. Chen. She has been with my family for 15 years. You would not be alone with just me if that is what worries you." It was exactly what worried her, though not in the way he might think. Olivia had learned that depending on anyone, especially a man, came with strings attached, but she was also practical enough to know when she was out of options. "All right," she said finally. "Thank you, Mr. Irving. I am Olivia Vernon." "Pleased to meet you, Miss Vernon, though I wish it were under better circumstances." He put his hat back on and looked at the wagon again. "Here is what we will do. You will ride my horse. I will lead your mare and carry what supplies you need immediately. We will come back with a proper team and wagon to haul this back to my ranch. I will leave a marker so no one thinks it is abandoned and helps themselves." The plan was sensible, and Olivia found herself nodding. Within 20 minutes, Thomas had gathered her most essential belongings, secured the wagon as best he could, and helped her mount his horse. He was careful not to touch her more than necessary, which she appreciated. Then he took the reins and began leading both horses north toward his ranch, walking in the blazing sun as though it did not bother him at all. "You should be riding," Olivia said after 10 minutes of watching him walk. "This is your horse. And you are the one who has been working in the sun for an hour trying to fix a wheel. I am used to this heat. I will be fine." They traveled in silence for a while, and Olivia found herself studying him. Thomas Irving moved with the easy grace of a man comfortable in his own skin. He kept a steady pace, not hurrying but not wasting time either. Every so often he would scan the horizon with the automatic awareness of someone who had learned to watch for trouble. "Have you lived here long?" Olivia asked finally, feeling awkward with the silence. "Born in Nevada, but my father moved us here when I was 12. He started the ranch, and when he died 4 years ago, it became mine." Thomas glanced back at her. "What brings you to St. George? We do not get many single women traveling alone through here." "My father left me some land just outside of town, 40 acres near the river. I am planning to farm it." Thomas was quiet for a moment, and Olivia bristled, waiting for him to tell her all the reasons a woman could not manage a farm alone, but he surprised her. "That is probably the old Vernon place. I heard Henry Vernon died a few years back. I am sorry for your loss. He was a good man from what I knew of him." "You knew my father?" Olivia felt a rush of unexpected emotion. "Not well. He came through town a few times, always talked about bringing his family out here once he got the land ready. I did not know he had passed." Thomas adjusted his grip on the reins. "That is good land. The irrigation from the river makes it some of the best farming soil in the area. But it has been sitting unused for 3 years. It will need a lot of work." "I am not afraid of work." Olivia heard the challenge in her own voice. Thomas looked back at her again, and this time there was something like approval in his eyes. "I can see that. Your hands tell me you are not used to sitting idle." Olivia glanced down at her calloused, sun-browned hands and felt a strange mix of shame and pride. A proper lady should have soft, white hands, But Olivia had stopped being a proper lady the day she started working in her aunt's garden to earn her keep. "How much further to your ranch?" she asked, changing the subject. "About another mile. You can see it just beyond that rise." They crested a small hill, and Olivia saw Thomas Irving's ranch spread out below them. It was more impressive than she had expected. A solid two-story house with a wide porch sat at the center, surrounded by several outbuildings, corrals, and what looked like extensive pastures. Cattle dotted the landscape, and she could see horses in a nearby enclosure. This was not some small homestead. This was a successful operation. "This is beautiful," she said without thinking. Thomas looked pleased. "Thank you. My father built most of it, but I have added on over the years. We run about 500 head of cattle and breed horses on the side. It keeps me busy." As they approached the house, a small Chinese woman came out onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She looked to be in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and sharp, intelligent eyes that took in the situation immediately. "Thomas, who is this?" she asked in lightly accented English. "Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Olivia Vernon. Her wagon broke down on the road. I told her we could help with repairs." He helped Olivia dismount, and she felt how shaky her legs were after the stress of the morning. Mrs. Chen came down the steps and took Olivia's arm with surprising strength. "You look half dead from the heat. Come inside. Thomas, you take care of the horses." "I will take care of Miss Vernon." Before Olivia could protest, she found herself being guided into the house and deposited in a comfortable chair in a spacious kitchen. Mrs. Chen pressed a glass of cool water into her hands and disappeared into another room, returning moments later with a damp cloth. "For your hands," she said, gesturing to the bleeding scrapes Olivia had gotten from the wagon wheel. "Thank you, but I can manage," Olivia said. "You can manage, yes. But why manage when someone offers help?" Mrs. Chen began cleaning the wounds with efficient, gentle movements. "Thomas tells me you are Henry Vernon's daughter. I am sorry about your father. This is a hard place to be alone." Olivia felt tears threaten again and forced them back. "I will be fine once I get to my father's land." Mrs. Chen made a non-committal sound and finished bandaging Olivia's hands. "That land has been empty for 3 years. The house, does it still stand?" "I do not know," Olivia admitted. "I have never seen it. My father bought it and was preparing it before he could bring us out, but then he got sick." The older woman shook her head. "You rest here today. Tonight you stay in the guest room. Tomorrow Thomas will take you to see this land. Then you will know what you are dealing with." "I cannot impose on you like that," Olivia protested. "It is no imposition. We have the room, and it is the decent thing to do." Mrs. Chen's tone made it clear the matter was settled. "Besides, your wagon needs repairs. That will take Thomas at least a day, maybe 2. Thomas came in then, having seen to the horses. He had removed his hat, and Olivia could see his dark hair was damp with sweat. He went directly to the sink and pumped water into a basin, splashing his face and neck. "I will ride back out with the team after lunch and haul the wagon in," he said, reaching for a towel. "Miss Vernon, Mrs. Chen is right. You should stay until we can get you properly outfitted. It would be foolish to send you back out on that road without making sure everything is secure." Olivia wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, but exhaustion and practicality won out. "Thank you. I will pay you for your trouble, of course." "We can discuss that later," Thomas said. "Right now you should rest. You have had a rough morning, Mrs. Chen showed Olivia to a guest room upstairs. It was simply furnished but clean and comfortable, with lace curtains on the windows and a colorful quilt on the bed. Olivia sat down on the edge of the mattress and finally let herself acknowledge how scared she had been out on that road, how close she had come to real danger. She lay back on the bed, intending to rest for just a few minutes, but exhaustion claimed her and she fell into a deep sleep. When Olivia woke, the light coming through the window told her it was late afternoon. She could hear voices downstairs and the smell of cooking food made her stomach growl. She stood, straightened her clothes as best she could, and made her way down to the kitchen. Thomas was sitting at the large wooden table going over what looked like ledgers. He looked up when she entered and stood politely. "Did you rest well?" he asked. "Yes, thank you. I did not mean to sleep so long. You needed it. I got your wagon back here. The wheel is in worse shape than I thought, but I can make a new one. It will take me tomorrow to do it properly. Mr. Irving, I really do appreciate everything you are doing, but I must insist on paying you for your time and materials." Thomas studied her for a moment, and Olivia had the uncomfortable feeling he could see right through her, could see that she probably did not have much money to spare. "Tell you what," he said slowly, "I do need to hire some help for a few weeks. Branding season just finished, but I've got inventory to organize, some mending that needs doing on tack and equipment, and Mrs. Chen could use help in the garden. If you are determined to pay your way, you could work off the debt. That way you save your cash for what you will need when you start your farm." It was a face-saving offer, and they both knew it. Olivia felt a wave of gratitude mixed with that familiar wariness of owing anyone anything. "How long would I need to work to cover the repairs?" she asked. "A week, maybe 2. Depends on how much needs doing at your father's place. Tomorrow I will take you to see it and then you can decide what makes sense." Olivia nodded slowly. It was logical. It would let her conserve her limited funds. And something about this ranch, about Thomas Irving and Mrs. Chen, felt safe in a way she had not experienced in a long time. "All right," she said. "I accept your offer." Thomas smiled then, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face and made him look younger. "Good, now sit down. Mrs. Chen will have supper ready soon, and she gets irritable if people do not appreciate her cooking." Over supper, which was a delicious meal of roasted chicken, vegetables from the garden, and fresh bread, Olivia learned more about Thomas and his ranch. He employed 3 regular ranch hands, though they lived in the bunkhouse and ate their meals there. He raised cattle primarily, but had developed a reputation for breeding good horses. He was respected in St. George and served on the town council. "You have family in the area?" Olivia asked. Thomas's expression grew somber. "My mother died when I was young and my father passed 4 years ago, like I mentioned. I had a younger sister, but she died from fever when she was 16, so no, it is just me now." "I am sorry," Olivia said softly. "I lost my mother young too. It is hard." Their eyes met across the table, and Olivia felt something shift between them, an understanding, a recognition of shared loss. Mrs. Chen cleared her throat. "Too much sad talk. Tomorrow you see the land and then we plan. That is better." That night, lying in the comfortable bed in the guest room, Olivia stared at the ceiling and wondered what she was doing. She had been so determined to make it on her own, to prove she did not need anyone. But Thomas Irving had appeared on that road like an answer to a prayer she had been too proud to say out loud. He had offered help without making her feel weak, had given her a way to maintain her dignity while accepting what she needed. And he had kind eyes. That should not matter, but it did. The next morning dawned clear and hot. After breakfast, Thomas saddled 2 horses and helped Olivia mount. They rode east toward the river, following a well-worn trail. Olivia's nervousness grew with each mile. What if the land was worthless? What if the house her father had built was destroyed? What if she had traveled all this way for nothing? They rounded a bend and Thomas pointed. "There. That is the Vernon property." Olivia's heart sank. The house was still standing, but just barely. The roof had partially collapsed on one side and one of the windows was broken. The porch sagged dangerously. The land around it was overgrown with sagebrush and weeds. The irrigation ditch her father must have dug was clogged with debris. She dismounted without waiting for help and walked toward the house, feeling tears burn hot in her eyes. This was her inheritance. This broken-down shack and 40 acres of neglected land. Thomas came up beside her. It is not as bad as it looks. Yes, it is, Olivia said, her voice flat. Look at it. The roof is caved in. The whole structure is probably unsound. The walls are solid, Thomas said, walking closer to examine the building. Your father built well. He used good timber and the foundation is stone. The roof can be replaced. The porch can be rebuilt. With work, this could be a good home. With work, Olivia repeated. And how am I supposed to do all that work alone? Thomas turned to look at her. You are not alone, not anymore. I told you I would help with the wagon and I meant it. But I can see this is bigger than that, so let me make you another offer. Olivia waited, afraid to hope. You work on my ranch for the rest of the summer. In exchange, I will help you get this house livable. I have got the materials and the men to do it. We can have this place fixed up in a month, maybe less. You will have a roof over your head that does not leak, a solid porch and windows that close. Then, come fall, you can move in and start working your land properly. Why would you do that? Olivia asked, searching his face. Why would you help a stranger like this? Thomas was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the neglected land. When my father died, I was 23 years old and barely knew how to run a ranch. The neighbors helped me. They taught me what I needed to know, helped me through that first year when I made every mistake possible. Out here, we help each other. That is how we survive. He met her eyes. And you are not a stranger anymore, Olivia. You are Henry Vernon's daughter, and that makes you a neighbor. Olivia felt something crack open inside her chest, some hard shell of self-protection she had been carrying for years. I do not know how I would ever repay you. You already agreed to work for me. That is payment enough. Thomas smiled slightly. Besides, I have a feeling you will be the kind of neighbor who would do the same for someone else down the line. That is how it works. They spent the next hour walking the property. Thomas pointed out the good things. The solid irrigation ditch that just needed clearing, the rich soil near the river, the natural windbreak of cottonwood trees on the north side. He made notes about what needed doing and estimated how long each task would take. By the time they rode back to his ranch, Olivia felt a cautious optimism beginning to take root. It would be hard work, but maybe, just maybe, she could make this dream real. Over the next week, Olivia fell into a routine at the Irving ranch. She woke early and helped Mrs. Chen with breakfast. Then she worked in the garden, mending fences, pulling weeds, and harvesting vegetables. In the afternoons, she helped organize the tack room and did mending on saddles and bridles. The work was hard but satisfying, and always she was aware of Thomas. He was often nearby, working with the horses or meeting with his ranch hands. She noticed how his men respected him, how he was firm but fair, quick to praise good work and patient when teaching. She noticed how he was gentle with the horses, how he always made sure misses. Chen had everything she needed, how he never spoke down to anyone. One evening, about 10 days after her arrival, Thomas came into the kitchen where Olivia was helping Mrs. Chen prepare supper. I am riding over to your place tomorrow to start on the roof, he said. I thought you might want to come along, see how things are progressing. I would like that, Olivia said. Good. We will leave early around dawn. It will be cooler. The next morning they rode out with 2 of Thomas's ranch hands, hauling a wagon full of lumber and supplies. When they arrived at her property, Olivia was amazed to see that someone had already cleared the debris from the irrigation ditch and the worst of the weeds from around the house. "When did this happen?" she asked. Thomas shrugged. "I had some free time a couple of evenings this week." He had come out here after full days of work on his own ranch to help prepare her land. Olivia felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the Utah sun. She watched as Thomas and his men worked. Thomas had removed his shirt because of the heat, and Olivia found her eyes drawn to the play of muscles across his back as he hammered and lifted. He was strong, but it was more than physical strength. There was a solidity to him, a reliability that made her feel safe. Around midday, Olivia unpacked the lunch Mrs. Chen had prepared and called the men to eat. They sat in the shade of the cottonwoods, and Olivia found herself sitting next to Thomas, their shoulders almost touching. "You are good at this," she said, gesturing to the house where new beams were already replacing the damaged roof supports. "I've had a lot of practice. Building and fixing things is part of ranching." Thomas took a drink from his canteen and wiped his mouth. "How are you finding the work at my place?" "I like it," Olivia said honestly. "Mrs. Chen is teaching me about growing things in this climate. It is different from Colorado. She is a good teacher. She taught me everything I know about keeping a garden alive in the desert." Thomas paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" Olivia tensed slightly. "You can ask. Why did you come out here alone? No offense, but this is dangerous country for a woman traveling by herself." Olivia looked out at her land, and decided Thomas deserved honesty. "After my father died, I lived with my aunt. She remarried last year to a man named Walter Crane. He was nice enough at first, but then he started coming to my room at night. Just to talk, he said. But I knew what he really wanted. I told my aunt and she did not believe me. Said I was trying to cause trouble, so I left." Thomas was very still beside her. When he spoke, his voice was tight with controlled anger. "He tried to force himself on you. He tried. I fought him off and left that same night. I had been saving money for 2 years, ever since I found out about the land here. It was enough to buy supplies and the wagon, so I came west." "That took courage," Thomas said quietly. "It took desperation," Olivia corrected. "I did not have any other choice." "You had choices. You could have married someone back there, even someone you did not love, just for protection. You could have tried to find work in a city. But you chose to come here, to claim what was yours and build something for yourself. That is courage, Olivia." The way he said her name, with such respect and warmth, made her heart beat faster. She looked at him and found him watching her with an intensity that took her breath away. "Thomas," she said softly, and then stopped, not sure what she wanted to say. One of the ranch hands called out a question about measurements, and the moment broke. Thomas stood, offered her his hand to help her up, and went back to work. But something had changed between them. Some invisible line had been crossed. That night back at the ranch, Olivia could not sleep. She kept thinking about Thomas, about the way he looked at her, about the warmth of his hand when he helped her up. She was attracted to him, she could admit that to herself. But it was more than attraction. She respected him, she liked him, and that was dangerous. She had come here to build a life for herself, alone. Depending on a man, even a good man like Thomas, felt like giving up the independence she had fought so hard to claim. But at the same time, she was beginning to understand what Thomas had said about neighbors helping each other. Maybe true strength was not about doing everything alone. Maybe it was about knowing when to accept help and being willing to give it in return. The days flowed into weeks. Olivia's hands grew more calloused, her skin more brown from the sun. The house on her property slowly transformed. The roof was replaced, solid and strong. The porch was rebuilt. New glass was installed in the windows. Inside, the walls were repaired and whitewashed. Thomas built a new door and rehung it properly. Olivia worked alongside the men when she could, learning how to hammer a nail straight, how to judge if a board was level, how to think through a problem and find a solution. Thomas was a patient teacher, never making her feel stupid when she made mistakes, always explaining why something was done a certain way. One afternoon, they were working alone at her house. The ranch hands had gone back to handle some issue with the cattle, and Thomas had stayed to finish hanging kitchen cabinets he had built. Olivia was helping him, holding boards steady while he secured them. "That should do it," Thomas said, driving in the final nail. He stepped back to examine his work, and Olivia realized how close they were standing. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell the clean sweat and wood shavings that clung to him. "Thomas," she said. He looked down at her, and she saw her own feelings reflected in his eyes. Longing, confusion, hope, fear. Before she could lose her courage, she reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Olivia," he said, his voice rough. "I do not want to take advantage. You have been through so much, and I am helping you. I do not want you to feel obligated." "I do not feel obligated," she said. "I feel grateful, yes, but this is different. This is something I want." Thomas closed his eyes briefly, as though gathering his strength. When he opened them, he took her hand from his face and held it gently. "I care about you. More than I should, probably. You came here to build a life for yourself, and I do not want to get in the way of that." "What if I want you in my life?" Olivia asked. "What if being alone is not what I really want after all?" "You need to be sure," Thomas said. "You need to know you are choosing this, choosing me, because it is what you want. Not because you feel like you owe me something or because you are scared to be alone." Olivia felt frustration rise in her chest. "You think I do not know my own mind? You think I am some weak woman who does not understand what she wants?" "No," Thomas said firmly. "I think you are strong and capable and smart. I also think you have been hurt and scared and running for a long time. I think you deserve the chance to be still, to be safe, to figure out what you really want without anyone pressuring you." He was right, and that made it worse. Olivia pulled her hand away and stepped back. "So what do you suggest?" "I suggest we finish getting your house ready. You move in like we planned. You spend some time on your own land, living the life you came here to build. And if, after all that, you still feel the same way about me, then we will talk about it again." It was sensible. It was respectful. It was infuriating. But looking at Thomas's face, seeing the strain there, Olivia realized something important. He was protecting her, yes, but he was also protecting himself. He had lost everyone he loved. He was afraid too. "All right," she said quietly. "We will do it your way." But that night, lying in her bed at the ranch, Olivia made a decision. She would move into her house. She would prove to Thomas and to herself that she could stand on her own. And then, when she had done that, she would show him that choosing to be with someone was not weakness. It was strength. 2 weeks later, the house was finished. It was not fancy, but it was solid and clean and beautiful to Olivia's eyes. Thomas had even built her a table and 2 chairs, a bed frame and kitchen shelves. Mrs. Chen had contributed curtains, blankets, and enough preserved food to last through the winter. On the day Olivia moved in, half the town seemed to show up. Neighbors she had not met brought gifts: a milk cow, some chickens, vegetable starts for her garden, tools and supplies. Thomas had clearly told people about her, and the community was welcoming her as one of their own. By evening, Olivia stood on her new porch, looking out at her land as the sun set, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. Thomas came to stand beside her. "How does it feel?" he asked. "Like coming home," Olivia said. "Thank you, Thomas, for everything. You are welcome." He paused, then added, "I will come by in a few days, check on how you are settling in." I would like that. He tipped his hat to her and rode away, and Olivia watched him go, her heart full of feelings she was not ready to name yet. Living alone on her property was both easier and harder than Olivia had expected. The work was constant. She had to manage the irrigation, tend her garden, care for the animals, and deal with 100 small problems that arose every day. But she loved it. She loved waking up in her own house, eating food she had grown herself, making decisions without having to answer to anyone. Thomas did come by every few days, always with some excuse. He needed to check the roof. He wanted to see how the chickens were doing. He thought she might need help clearing a new field. Olivia saw through every excuse, and she loved him for it. He was giving her space while making sure she was safe. One day in late August, Olivia was working in her garden when she heard horses approaching. She straightened, shading her eyes, and felt her blood run cold. 3 men she did not recognize were riding toward her house, and something about the way they moved made her nervous. They stopped at her fence line, looking at her with expressions that made her skin crawl. The leader, a heavy-set man with a thick beard, leaned forward in his saddle. "This the Vernon place?" he asked. "It is," Olivia said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can I help you? We are looking for work. Heard there might be a ranch nearby that was hiring." "The Irving Ranch is about 3 miles north," Olivia said, pointing. "Thomas Irving is the owner. He might need hands." The bearded man looked at his companions and grinned in a way that made Olivia's stomach turn. "That's so. Pretty woman like you living out here all alone. That does not seem too safe." "I am perfectly safe, thank you," Olivia said. "Now if you will excuse me, I have work to do." She turned to walk back toward her house, every instinct screaming at her to run. She heard the creak of saddle leather and knew one of them had dismounted. Her hand went to the pocket of her apron where she kept a small knife she used for harvesting vegetables. "Now do not be unfriendly," the bearded man said, and she could hear he was walking toward her. "We just want to talk." Olivia spun around, pulling the knife from her pocket. "I said I have work to do. Leave. Now." The man laughed. "You going to stick me with that little thing? That is not very neighborly." Olivia opened her mouth to scream, hoping Thomas might somehow hear, might somehow know she was in trouble. But before she could make a sound, a gunshot cracked across the desert air. All 4 of them froze. Olivia looked toward the sound and saw Thomas riding hard toward them, his rifle in his hand. He fired another shot into the air, and the 3 strangers scrambled for their horses. Thomas reached them in seconds, his rifle now pointed directly at the bearded man. "You have about 5 seconds to get on that horse and ride out of here before I decide you are threatening my neighbor." The man held up his hands. "We did not mean any harm, just talking." "You talked. Now leave." Thomas's voice was cold and hard in a way Olivia had never heard before. "And if I see you anywhere near this property again, I will not be firing warning shots." The 3 men mounted quickly and rode off toward the main road. Thomas watched them until they were out of sight, then turned to Olivia. The coldness melted from his face, replaced by concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, dismounting quickly and coming to her side. "Did they touch you?" "No, you got here in time," Olivia said, and then, to her embarrassment, she started shaking. The knife fell from her hand as the fear she had been holding back crashed over her. Thomas caught her as her knees buckled, holding her steady. "You are safe. I have got you. You are safe." Olivia buried her face in his chest and let herself cry, let herself be held, let herself be weak for just a moment. Thomas's arms were strong around her, and she could feel his heart beating fast against her cheek. When the shaking finally stopped, she pulled back and looked up at him. "How did you know? How did you get here so fast?" "I was on my way over to check on you," Thomas said. I saw them turn off toward your place and something did not feel right, so I hurried." His jaw tightened. "I should have gotten here sooner." "You got here exactly when I needed you," Olivia said. She put her hand on his chest, feeling the steady thump of his heart. "Thomas, I have been living here for 6 weeks. I have proved I can manage on my own. I can plant and harvest and fix things when they break. I am not afraid of hard work or being alone, but I am tired of being alone. I do not want to be alone anymore." Thomas covered her hand with his. "Olivia, what are you saying?" "I am saying I love you," Olivia said, the words coming out in a rush. "I think I have loved you since that first day when you found me on the road and offered to help without making me feel weak. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you treat everyone with respect. I love how patient you are and how hard you work. I love you, Thomas Irving, and I am choosing you. Not because I am scared or desperate or grateful, but because I want you in my life." For a long moment, Thomas just stared at her, his eyes searching her face. Then he smiled, a wide, genuine smile that made him look almost boyish. "I love you too," he said. "I have been half crazy trying to give you space when all I wanted was to be near you every second of every day. I love your courage and your determination. I love how you are not afraid to ask for help, but never expect anyone to do things for you. I love how you laugh with Mrs. Chen and how gentle you are with the animals. I love everything about you, Olivia Vernon." He leaned down and kissed her, and Olivia felt like she was finally, truly home. This was what she had been looking for all along, not just land or independence, but connection. Someone to build a life with, someone who made her stronger even as she made him stronger too. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thomas rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he said. "I know it is fast, but out here, when you know something is right, you do not wait. Marry me, Olivia. Let me spend the rest of my life loving you." "Yes," Olivia said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." They married 3 weeks later in the small church in St. George. Mrs. Chen cried through the entire ceremony. Half the town attended, and the celebration afterward lasted long into the night. Thomas had never looked more handsome than he did in his new suit, and Olivia wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her make. That night, Thomas carried Olivia over the threshold of his ranch house, which was now her home too. "I want you to know," he said, setting her down gently, "your land is still yours. I do not want you to feel like you gave up your dream for me." "I did not give it up," Olivia said, touching his face with gentle fingers. "I just changed it into something better. We can work both properties. That is what partners do, right? They work together." "Right," Thomas said, pulling her close. "Together." The first year of their marriage was full of hard work and deep joy. They divided their time between both properties, building the Vernon land into a productive farm while maintaining the Irving ranch. It was exhausting, but Olivia had never been happier. She and Thomas worked side by side, and she discovered that she did not have to choose between independence and partnership. With Thomas, she could be strong and vulnerable, capable and supported, all at the same time. Mrs. Chen continued to run the Irving household, but she and Olivia became close friends. The older woman taught Olivia about preserving food, about Chinese medicine, about the history of the area. In return, Olivia helped with the increased workload and brought laughter and youth into the house. In the spring of 1879, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. She told Thomas one evening as they sat on the porch of the Vernon house, watching the sunset. "I am going to have a baby," she said, taking his hand and placing it on her still flat stomach. Thomas went very still, his eyes wide with wonder. "A baby, we are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" Olivia asked, suddenly nervous. They had not talked about children, had been too busy just learning to be husband and wife. Happy. Thomas pulled her onto his lap, holding her carefully. Olivia, I am more than happy. I am terrified and thrilled and grateful all at once. A baby, our baby. They sat there for a long time, just holding each other, imagining the future. The pregnancy was not easy. The summer heat was brutal, and Olivia struggled with sickness and exhaustion. But Thomas was endlessly patient, taking on extra work so she could rest, bringing her cool drinks and fanning her when the heat became unbearable. Mrs. Chen made special teas and foods to help with the nausea and fussed over Olivia like a mother hen. In late November, on a cold, clear night, Olivia went into labor. Mrs. Chen sent one of the ranch hands for the doctor in town, and Thomas stayed by Olivia's side, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement even as he watched her pain with helpless anguish. I cannot do this, Olivia gasped during a particularly hard contraction. It hurts too much. Yes, you can, Thomas said firmly, wiping her face with a cool cloth. You are the strongest person I know. You traveled across the desert alone. You rebuilt a house. You faced down 3 armed men with nothing but a vegetable knife. You can do this, Olivia. I know you can. His faith in her gave her strength. The doctor arrived just before midnight, and 2 hours later, Olivia heard the most beautiful sound in the world, her baby's first cry. It is a boy, the doctor said, placing the tiny, squalling infant in her arms. A healthy boy. Olivia looked down at her son, at his red face and tiny fists, and felt love unlike anything she had ever experienced. She looked up at Thomas and saw tears streaming down his face as he stared at their child with absolute wonder. He is perfect, Thomas whispered. You are perfect. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you for this gift. They named him Henry after Olivia's father. Little Henry was a calm baby, blessed with his father's dark hair and his mother's blue eyes. Thomas was a devoted father, getting up for midnight feedings even though Olivia insisted she could handle it, singing lullabies in his deep, off-key voice, carrying the baby around the ranch to show him everything. Watching Thomas with their son, Olivia fell in love with him all over again. This strong, capable man who could break a wild horse and build a house with his bare hands was so gentle with their tiny baby. He was patient when Henry cried, delighted by every small milestone, utterly devoted to his family. Mrs. Chen was equally smitten with the baby. She made him special clothes, sang to him in Chinese, and declared him the smartest, most handsome baby ever born. The ranch hands took turns carving toys for him, and the neighbors brought gifts and advice. The years flowed by in a rhythm of seasons and growing love. Henry learned to walk, then to talk, then to ride. Olivia and Thomas continued to build their combined enterprise, the Irving Vernon operation becoming known throughout the territory for quality cattle and crops. They hired more workers, expanded both properties, and became pillars of the St. George community. In 1882, Olivia gave birth to twin girls, Sarah and Grace. Thomas was beside himself with joy, declaring that he now had the perfect family. The girls had their mother's blonde hair and their father's dark eyes, and they were as different as night and day. Sarah was quiet and thoughtful, while Grace was loud and adventurous. Life was busy with 3 young children and 2 properties to manage, but Olivia thrived on the challenge. She had help now, hired women who came in to assist with the children and the household, workers who handled much of the heavy farm labor. But she still got her hands dirty every day, still planted and harvested, still worked alongside Thomas whenever she could. One evening in the summer of 1884, Olivia and Thomas were sitting on the porch of the Irving house, watching their children play in the yard. Henry, now 4, was teaching the twins how to stack blocks. The sun was setting, painting everything in warm, golden light. "Do you ever miss it?" Thomas asked quietly. "The life you thought you would have, farming your land alone and independent." Olivia thought about it for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I thought I wanted to be alone because being alone felt safer than being hurt. But you taught me that real strength is not about refusing help. It is about accepting help when you need it and giving help when you can. It is about building something with someone, not just for yourself." She took his hand, threading her fingers through his. "You saw me struggling on that road 6 years ago, and you offered me your strength. You helped me fix my wagon, rebuild my house, start my farm. You gave me everything I needed to stand on my own. But the greatest gift you gave me was showing me that I did not have to stand alone. That we are stronger together than we could ever be apart." Thomas brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "You made me stronger too. Before you, I was just going through the motions of living, working hard but not really feeling anything. You brought joy back into my life. You gave me a family, a purpose beyond just maintaining what my father built. You made me want to build something new, something better." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching their children, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. "I love you, Olivia Irving," Thomas said. "More today than yesterday and not as much as tomorrow." "I love you too," Olivia said, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you for stopping on that road. Thank you for seeing me." "Thank you for letting me help," Thomas replied. "Thank you for being brave enough to accept what was offered and strong enough to offer so much in return." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Olivia felt profound gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. She had left Colorado running from danger and fear, determined to make it alone. She had broken down on a desert road, exhausted and scared and almost out of hope. And Thomas had found her there, had offered his strength without asking for anything in return, had helped her stand on her own 2 feet, and then stood beside her as an equal partner. She had thought independence meant doing everything alone. But Thomas had taught her that true independence was about having the freedom to choose. And she chose him, every day, not because she needed him to survive, but because life was so much richer, so much more meaningful when it was shared with someone you loved. In the following years, the Irving family continued to grow and prosper. Henry grew into a responsible young man who loved working the land as much as his parents did. Sarah developed a talent for breeding horses, with a natural gift for understanding the animals. Grace became interested in the business side of the operation, learning to keep books and negotiate sales. In 1887, Olivia gave birth to another son, whom they named Thomas Jr. The boy was the spitting image of his father, and Thomas Sr. joked that now he had someone to carry on his name and his work. The ranch and farm continued to expand. What had started as 2 separate properties had merged into one thriving enterprise. The irrigation systems Olivia had designed brought water to previously arid land, allowing them to grow crops that others said were impossible in the desert. Thomas's breeding program produced horses that were sought after throughout the territory. Together, they built something remarkable. But more than the material success, they built a family filled with love. Their children grew up seeing their parents work together as true partners, seeing that marriage could be a source of strength rather than a limitation. They saw their mother manage the finances and direct workers with confidence, and they saw their father support her decisions without question. They saw their father gentle with animals and children, and they saw their mother fearless in the face of challenges. The community of St. George grew around them. The little settlement became a thriving town, and Thomas served multiple terms on the town council while Olivia helped establish a school and a library. They became respected leaders, known for their fairness and generosity. But it was the quiet moments that Olivia treasured most. Evenings on the porch with Thomas after the children were in bed, talking about the day and planning for tomorrow. Sunday afternoons when the whole family would gather for Mrs. Chen's elaborate dinners, the house filled with laughter and conversation. Working beside Thomas in the fields, their hands moving in practiced rhythm, communicating without words. One day in the summer of 1890, Olivia was working in the garden when she heard a rider approaching. She looked up and saw a woman about her own age, sitting uncertainly on a horse at the edge of her property. The woman looked exhausted, her clothes dusty from travel, and Olivia recognized that expression of determined fear that she had worn herself 12 years ago. Olivia walked to the fence. "Can I help you?" "I am sorry to bother you," the woman said. "I am looking for work. I heard there might be ranches around here that need hands." Olivia studied the woman and saw herself in those tired, wary eyes. "What is your name?" "Margaret. Margaret Foster." "Well, Margaret, I am Olivia Irving. My husband and I run this operation and we could always use good help. Can you cook, garden, work with horses?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I can learn. I am a hard worker. I just need a chance." Olivia smiled, remembering Thomas giving her that same chance. "Come on up to the house. Let me get you some water and something to eat, and we can talk about what needs doing." As Margaret dismounted and followed her toward the house, Olivia felt the circle completing itself. She had been offered help when she needed it most. Now she was in a position to offer that same help to someone else. This was what Thomas had meant about how they survived out here, how they built something lasting. Not by standing alone, but by standing together, by helping each other up when they stumbled, by offering strength to those who needed it and accepting strength in return. That evening she told Thomas about Margaret, about how she reminded Olivia of herself 12 years ago. "We should hire her," Thomas said without hesitation. "Give her a chance like you got." "I already did," Olivia said, smiling. "She is going to help Mrs. Chen in the house and work in the garden. I thought we could fix up the old foreman's cottage for her to live in." Thomas pulled her close and kissed the top of her head. "I love how generous you are, how you see people who are struggling and want to help them." "I learned from the best," Olivia said, wrapping her arms around his waist. "A certain rancher taught me that accepting help is not weakness, and offering it is not charity. It is just what decent people do for each other." They stood there in the evening light, holding each other, while around them the ranch bustled with life. Children's laughter drifted from the house. Cattle lowed in the distance. The smell of supper cooking wafted through the open kitchen window. This was the life they had built together, brick by brick, day by day, through hard work and deep love. The years continued to pass, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their growing children. Henry married a girl from town in 1895, a sweet young woman named Emma who fit perfectly into the family. They moved into the old Vernon house, which had been expanded and improved over the years, and began farming that original 40 acres that had brought Olivia to Utah in the first place. Sarah married a horse trainer from Nevada in 1897, and they built a house on the northern edge of the property to be close to the stables. Grace showed no interest in marriage, instead throwing herself into expanding the business side of the operation. She began shipping their beef and crops to markets in California and built the Irving Vernon brand into something known throughout the West. Thomas Jr. was still young, but he followed his father everywhere, learning everything he could about ranching and farming. He had his father's patience and his mother's sharp mind, And Olivia knew the business would be in good hands when eventually Thomas and she were ready to step back. But that time was still far off. Even as they moved through their 40s, both Thomas and Olivia remained active in the day-to-day operations. They had help now, certainly, employees and adult children who handled much of the work. But they still rose early every morning, still walked the property together, still worked side by side whenever they could. Mrs. Chen grew older and moved into a more advisory role, teaching the younger women who came to work in the house, while spending her afternoons with the grandchildren who were beginning to arrive. She never lost her sharp wit or her tendency to fuss over Thomas and Olivia, and they loved her dearly for it. One evening in the fall of 1899, as the 19th century drew to a close, Olivia and Thomas rode out to the place where they had first seen her father's property together. So much had changed since that day 21 years ago. The broken-down shack had been replaced by a solid farmhouse where their son and his family now lived. The overgrown land had been transformed into productive fields and pastures. The whole area had prospered, and they had been part of that growth. They dismounted and stood looking out over the land as the sun began to set. Thomas put his arm around Olivia's shoulders, and she leaned into him, as comfortable with his touch now as she was with her own heartbeat. "Do you remember the first time we stood here?" Thomas asked. "You looked at that broken-down house and almost cried." "I did cry," Olivia admitted. "I thought I had made a terrible mistake coming here. I thought I would never be able to make it work. But you did. We did." "We did," Olivia agreed. She looked up at her husband, seeing the silver that now threaded through his dark hair, the lines that time and sun had etched around his eyes, the strength that still radiated from him despite the passing years. "Thomas, do you ever regret it? Taking in a stranded woman on the side of the road? Your life would have been simpler without me." Thomas laughed, a deep, genuine sound. "Simpler maybe, but not better, never better. Olivia, you were the best thing that ever happened to me. You brought life and love and purpose into my world. You gave me a family. You helped me build something bigger than I ever could have built alone." He cupped her face in his rough, calloused hands. "I saw you struggling that day on the road, and I offered what strength I could. But the truth is, you made me so much stronger. You still do every single day." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, happy tears this time. "I love you, Thomas Irving. Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for seeing me, for helping me, for loving me." "Always," Thomas promised. "For as long as I draw breath, I will love you." They kissed as the sun set over the land they had built together. Two people who had found each other in the harshness of the desert and created something beautiful. Around them, their empire spread out. Fields golden with harvest, cattle grazing contentedly, houses filled with family, a community they had helped build and nurture. Olivia had come to Utah alone, frightened and determined to prove she needed no one. She had been wrong about that, but not in the way she had feared. She did need people. She needed community, connection, love, but needing others did not make her weak. It made her human. And choosing to accept help, choosing to build a life with Thomas rather than just for herself, had not diminished her strength. It had multiplied it. Thomas had offered his strength when she was struggling, had given without asking for anything in return. But in doing so, he had received more than he gave. Olivia had brought joy back into his life, had given him family and purpose, had challenged him to grow beyond what he thought possible. They had made each other stronger, better, more complete. As they rode back to the ranch in the gathering darkness, Olivia thought about the young woman she had been, broken down on a desert road with a shattered wagon wheel and shattered dreams. If she could go back and tell that frightened girl what was coming, what would she say? She would say that sometimes the things that seem like disasters are actually doorways to something better. She would say that accepting help is not giving up your independence. It is choosing to be part of something larger than yourself. She would say that real strength is not about standing alone in isolation, but about standing together with someone who sees your worth and loves you anyway. Most of all, she would say that love, true love, does not diminish you. It multiplies you. It takes everything you are and makes it more, makes it better, makes it stronger. The ranch house came into view, lights glowing warm in the windows, smoke rising from the chimney. Home. Their home, built on a foundation of mutual respect, hard work, and abiding love. Inside, their children and grandchildren would be gathering for supper, the table full of noise and laughter and life. Thomas helped Olivia dismount, and they walked hand in hand to the house, ready for whatever the new century would bring, knowing that whatever challenges came, they would face them together. Because that was their strength, the thing that had sustained them through 21 years of marriage and would sustain them through 21 more, or 41, or however long they were blessed to have together. They had started as strangers on a desert road, one struggling and one offering help. They had become partners, lovers, friends, parents, grandparents, pillars of their community. They had built an empire together, not just of land and cattle and crops, but of love and family and belonging. And every day, in countless small ways, they continued to make each other stronger. That was their gift to each other, the true measure of their success. Not the acres they owned or the money they had earned, but the life they had created together, brick by brick, day by day, with hands joined and hearts united. As they stepped into the warm, noisy chaos of family dinner, Olivia squeezed Thomas's hand and he squeezed back, a silent conversation that needed no words. I love you. I see you. I choose you. Today, tomorrow, and always. This was their happily ever after, not an ending but a continuation, a love story that would ripple out through their children and grandchildren, through the community they had helped build, through everyone whose life they touched. They had started with one broken wagon wheel and two people willing to help each other. They had built a legacy of strength through partnership, of independence through connection, of love that made everything possible. And on that autumn evening in 1899, as the century turned and the world changed around them, Thomas and Olivia Irving sat down to dinner with their family, grateful for every moment, every challenge overcome, every joy shared. Two people who had found each other when they needed it most, who had chosen to walk through life together, who had discovered that the greatest strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together with someone who truly sees you. Their story was not unusual for the time and place. The West was full of people helping each other survive, building communities out of harsh wilderness, creating homes and families through sheer determination and mutual support. But for Thomas and Olivia, their story was everything. It was proof that love could transform loss into gain, that helping someone in need could change both your lives forever, that two people working together could achieve far more than either could alone. As the evening wore on and the family eventually dispersed to their various homes, Thomas and Olivia climbed the stairs to their bedroom, the same room they had shared for 21 years. They prepared for bed with the easy familiarity of long marriage, moving around each other in practiced rhythm. "Happy?" Thomas asked as they settled under the covers. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," Olivia replied, snuggling against his side, her head on his shoulder where it fit perfectly. "Me too," Thomas said, kissing the top of her head. "Thank you for saying yes that day, for trusting me enough to come to the ranch." "Thank you for giving me a reason to trust," Olivia replied. for being worthy of that trust every single day since. They drifted off to sleep in each other's arms, two people who had found their home not just in a place, but in each other. Outside, the desert night was cool and quiet, stars blazing in the vast darkness. Inside, the house was warm and safe, filled with the echoes of laughter and love. This was their legacy. Not just the land they had cultivated or the business they had built, but the love they had nurtured through years of joy and challenge, through births and deaths, through triumphs and setbacks. They had seen each other at their worst and their best, had supported each other through everything life threw at them, had chosen each other again and again, day after day, year after year. Olivia had been right all those years ago when she told Thomas he had made her stronger. But she had been even more right when she said he had taught her that strength did not mean refusing help. Real strength was knowing when to stand alone and when to stand together. It was being capable enough to manage on your own, but wise enough to know that life was richer, fuller, better when shared with someone who loved you. And Thomas had been right when he said Olivia made him stronger too. She had brought life and purpose back to his world, had given him reasons to build and grow rather than just maintain. She had challenged him to be better, to do more, to reach higher. Together, they had created something neither could have achieved alone. As the years continued to roll by into the new century, Thomas and Olivia remained devoted to each other and to the life they had built. They watched their grandchildren grow, saw the business continue to expand and thrive, remained active in their community, and never lost the habit of working side by side whenever they could. When they finally grew too old for the hard physical labor of ranching, they turned the day-to-day operations over to their children and spent their time as advisors and storytellers, passing down the wisdom they had gained through decades of living and working on this land. They still took their evening walks together, still sat on the porch watching the sunset, still held hands like young lovers. And when visitors asked how they had built such a successful operation, such a beautiful family, such a lasting love, they would smile at each other and give the same answer. By helping each other, by working together, by choosing partnership over isolation. By understanding that true strength comes not from standing alone, but from standing together. Thomas saw Olivia struggling on that desert road in 1878 and offered his strength. Olivia accepted that help and proved she could stand on her own. And together, through decades of love and work and family, they discovered the greatest truth of all, that two people who truly love each other, who respect each other, who work together as equal partners, become stronger together than either could ever be alone. That was their story. That was their legacy. That was the life they built, hand in hand, heart to heart, from a chance meeting on a dusty road to a love that lasted a lifetime and beyond.